Hi. Today I'd like to kind of get into a subject that might be a little touchy for a lot of people. It's a little controversial, although I don't really understand why, but it's really current in the news recently. And that would be equal rights. I'm going to call them equal rights. Right now, a lot of people want to call it gay rights. But really, it's not a gay rights issue, it's an equal rights issue. It has to do with whether some people can be designated as second-class citizens or whether everybody is truly equal under our Constitution. You know, our Constitution does say that all men and women were created equal, and they are endowed with certain inalienable rights, and one of these is the pursuit of happiness. Now, to me, the pursuit of happiness includes loving, living with, marrying, enjoying the company, just being with the person that you want to be with. And I really don't even understand why it's a controversial issue. Because, if you look back through just recent history, just go back into the 50s and 60s where the civil rights movement was taking hold, where blacks were struggling for their rights. And people were appalled at the idea of having to eat at the same lunch counter as an African American or use the same restroom. But we don't think twice about it now. And actually in 1958, there were 24 states that had outlawed interracial marriage. Today, it's all over TV. There are television programs. There's, Ice Loves, whatever her name is. It's relatively common. You see it. Nobody thinks a thing about it. But just 60 years ago, lots of us were alive 60 years ago. Lots of your parents were alive 60 years ago. It was absolutely unheard of to think about such a thing, which is exactly why you can't let states legislate minority rights. I mean, if you want to put minority rights up to a vote, they're always going to lose. That's why they're minority rights. The majority doesn't want to willingly hand over their privileged status to the minority for nothing in return. But thank God that's what our country was founded on, that all of us are actually equal. I mean, there's really no explanation for denying people the right to be with who they want to be with and denying their rights. It's really not about marriage. What it's about is the ability to visit your partner in a hospital. If you're a gay person, you don't have that right. You can't inherit their inheritance. If your parents kicked you out of the house at 20 because you were gay, and you live your life and you've been living with somebody for 10 years, and you end up in a terrible accident, and that person the person who knows you best, the one you've been living with, wants to determine what happens to your assets or to whether they should pull the plug or not, they have absolutely no right to do so. That right goes to the people who kicked you out and estranged you 10 years before. Now, there's just something fundamentally wrong with that, in my opinion. And civil unions, they're a nice little way to try and correct the problem. I mean, a lot of people, even our president, who recently came out yesterday, actually, and said that he did support the rights of anyone to get married. Basically, initially he did not support that because he believed that civil unions were enough. But civil unions still make you a second-class citizen. It's kind of like when the Supreme Court ruled that blacks were equal, they threw a little caveat in there. Well, they're equal but separate. And so then we had white restrooms and black restrooms, and white waiting rooms and black waiting rooms. And, it's not equal. It's different than equal. Equal is the exact same thing. So, You know, being in favor of equal rights for all people does not make you in favor of homosexuality. I mean, because you agree that civil rights should be extended toward everybody, African Americans or Latinos or whoever, does not make you in favor of minorities having more rights than everybody else. What it does is it makes you at peace with yourself. Because how in the world can you justify treating one group of people different than another group of people based solely on what they do in their own time? I mean, come on, seriously, really. Now, basically, I didn't want to make this a long, drawn-out thing. I just want to say that, you know, lots of us are parents. Lots of us have kids. I mean, do you really want your kid singled out, or your brother, or even your parents, because they're different than everybody else? They're not as good. They don't have the same rights as everyone else. Really, come on, please. But I'd like to finish this up by saying, get on the internet and Google. This came out in the news today, which I was really surprised to hear. I heard this before I actually came over. I want you to Google Mitt Romney bullying, because here's another difference between our president and Mitt Romney. Mitt Romney, when he was 18 years old and he was in a all-boys school, prep school, a new student came to that school who was a year earlier than Mitt and his buddies. Well, this new student, everybody immediately labeled him as gay, as a fag, as a homo, because he had bleach blonde hair that hung down over one of his eyes. Well, Mitt and his crew apparently were not very tolerant and didn't like it. Actually, on the news tonight, I heard that his best friend in this prep school came out with this story because he felt like he had to tell it. Because Mitt organized a group of his friends, and they decided they weren't going to take this. So they organized a posse. They went down, broke into this kid's dorm room. His buddies held him down while Mitt cut his hair off. Now, is that the kind of world we want to live in? Right now we're in a, you know, look at what happens when you get bullied. Columbine, I mean, Virginia Tech, all of these people were bullied. They were because they weren't accepted for who they are. Isn't it time in the United States of America that we just accept people for who they are? What business is it of anybody's what you do in your own personal time or with your own personal life? Why don't we just live and let live? Isn't that really the Christian credo?